trapped together on an abandoned space station. Before the silence, there was only distance between worlds, between hearts, between what we know and what we long to understand. If you've ever felt alone among stars, or wondered what love looks like across impossible lines, you're in the right place. Stay. Listen. Let the light between these words find you. And if this story touches you, like, comment, or share it with another wanderer. Your voice might help someone else feel a little less alone. Now, let us begin. The docking clamps hissed as the shuttle aligned with the decaying spine of Brin Station, a derelict orbital library adrift in twilight above the red star Mirax. A long-forgotten whisper of collaboration between the Muri and human diplomacy, Brin now drifted alone, abandoned after an unspecified incident nearly 10 cycles ago. The station shimmered faintly, its hull half swallowed by solar mist, like the bones of some sleeping beast. Dr. Rowan Lorne stood in the airlock's threshold, one hand resting on the grip of his sidearm, the other gripping the strap of his field pack. He didn't fidget, didn't sigh, didn't speak. He waited. He had been trained for diplomatic security, not companionship. Protocol suited him: rules, distances, well-defined roles. But even so, his heart ticked slightly faster than usual. Because she was coming. The Muri courier. The exiled noble. The mystery wrapped in light. The woman the brass refused to talk about in full. A soft hiss preceded her arrival. The inner shuttle door slid open, releasing a swirl of perfumed air, cool, faintly metallic, laced with ozone. Then she stepped forward. Vaela. She was taller than he'd expected, elegant in a way that seemed almost fragile. Her skin shimmered like liquid crystal, patterns of soft opalescent light dancing beneath a surface violet and blue with tinges of gold. Her eyes, slightly too large for a human face, blinked slowly in the dim light. She wore no armor. No visible weapons. Only robes of cascading woven light that fluttered with phantom wind. Her voice, when she spoke, was a thing of silk and mirrors. Dr. Lorne, or do you prefer Captain now? Rowan straightened. Doctor is fine. Her gaze flickered, amused. Impossible to say. And I suppose you'll be guarding me, not conversing? Rowan said nothing. She turned away, stepping lightly into the corridor of the station, her robes barely brushing the floor. He followed in silence. The Brin archive was colder than he remembered from training hollows. The lighting flickered with lazy irregularity, casting long shadows across the curved walls. They passed empty console bays, sealed archives with cracked glass panels, a mural half-faded, Unity through knowledge. Dust danced like pollen in the beams of failing fluorescence. Why is no one here? Vaela asked without looking at him. Skeleton crew. Automated systems handle most tasks now. The station was decommissioned after an incident involving photonic destabilization. She paused mid-step, then continued. Convenient. No eyes. No questions. Rowan didn't respond. He didn't ask what she meant. Not yet. They reached the habitation wing. One door blinked green, functional. The others were dark. Rowan entered first, scanning the small quarters, a kitchenette, a half-functional console, and one bed, narrow, military-issued, with a gray blanket folded at the foot. His jaw clenched. Vaela floated in behind him like a mirage, her light-toned skin glowing in muted indigo. Now contemplation, if he remembered the Muri emotional spectrum correctly. Only one bed, she said, surveying the room with casual indifference. How poetic. Rowan stepped to the wall console. I'll requisition another. Or a cot. Protocol demands separate accommodations. Protocol, she repeated, almost to herself, like the word amused her. How very human. He turned, jaw set. It's not appropriate. Vaela met his gaze. Tell me, doctor, do you always let protocol keep you safe? Even when it's just the two of us, alone, in a tomb of a station no one remembers. The air between them thickened. Rowan broke the moment, brushing past her to inspect the console again. I'll sleep on the floor? Viola's voice softened. As you wish, Guardian. Later, as the artificial day cycled into a night mode haze, Rowan sat cross-legged on the floor, rifle resting against the wall, eyes closed but not asleep. Across from him, Vaela sat on the edge of the bed, her face illuminated by the cool glow of a data crystal in her palm. Neither spoke for a long time. The silence was not awkward. It was heavy. Pressurized. Until she asked, quietly. Do you hear it? Rowan opened one eye. Hear what? She tilted her head slightly. Her antennae thin, ribbon-like crows, and quivered. The station hums differently here. Something in the walls, like a forgotten thought trying to be remembered. He frowned. Just background radiation and thermal echoes. Vaela didn't correct him. She simply lay back on the bed, the light in her skin dimming toward pale gray. Or perhaps ghosts, she whispered. The things we bury, only to carry them anyway? Rowan didn't answer. But as he turned off the overhead light, and the shadows deepened around them, he heard it too. A low, rhythmic hum, rising from the metal beneath her feet, soft as breath, persistent as memory. The station's artificial night held a stillness that felt manufactured, like someone had programmed the silence rather than earned it. Dr. Rowan Lorne awoke with a dull ache in his lower back. The floor was cold and unsympathetic beneath the thin insulation of a scavenged blanket. He rubbed at the stiffness in his neck and exhaled slowly, listening. Still that sound. That hum, low, pulsing, oddly organic, vibrated faintly through the walls and floor. It wasn't the usual groan of aging metal. It had rhythm. Cadence. Almost, breath. Across the room, Vaela was already awake, her elongated limbs folded beneath her as she sat on the bed in meditation. Her eyes were closed, and her skin pulsed with a slow, liquid rhythm, blue to violet to the faintest tinge of rose. It was beautiful. Unsettling. Like watching light dream. Sleep well, doctor, she asked without opening her eyes. Rowan cleared his throat. Well enough. Vaela smiled slightly. Humans always lie when asked that. He stood, brushing himself off. Not lying. Just prioritizing. She opened her eyes. That's another lie. You prioritize distance. He stopped mid-step, surprised by the directness. What are you implying? Vaela stood, moving toward the small kitchenette, a recess of outdated meal packs and barely working tech. Her fingertips grazed the edge of a metal counter, and the metal shimmered faintly in response. Only that your silence is louder than any voice. Rowan followed her into the kitchenette, trying to focus on anything but the way her presence made the space feel smaller. More intimate. He opened a panel and pulled out a vacuum-sealed protein bar. Breakfast. Vaela took it with both hands, almost reverently, as if unwrapping a diplomatic relic. This is edible. He raised an eyebrow. Technically. She took a cautious bite, chewed, then smiled. I've endured worse. Once, during a siege on Calisar 9, I lived 3 weeks on algae film and boiled sand fruit paste. Rowan blinked. You were in a siege. She waved a hand dismissively. Another life. Another self. I was a different shape then. That wasn't metaphor. Muri were known to shift subtly over time, their light bodies adapting based on emotional and political state. He wondered what kind of trauma hardened a noble emissary into someone who could speak so lightly about starvation. You talk like you've died before, Rowan said. Vaela looked up at him. Her skin dimmed to slate blue. Maybe I have. Later that cycle, the station's lights flickered again, not the way old bulbs flicker, but like a heartbeat skipping. And then came the sound again. Louder. Clearer. Not just humming now. Something deeper. A resonance that seemed to move through the walls rather than across them. The air thickened, buzzed faintly, like an old speaker catching frequencies it was never built to handle. Rowan stood, alert, hand near his weapon. Vaela, are you hearing this? She didn't answer. Her head was tilted to the side, antennae twitching rapidly. Her skin glowed in fractal waves too fast. Unstable. Vaela. She gasped suddenly, as if surfacing from underwater. Her hands trembled slightly, and Rowan instinctively reached for her, steadying her shoulders. What is this? He asked. Some kind of station malfunction. Viola's voice was hollow. It's not the station. Then what? Her eyes locked with his, and in that moment, he saw something crack behind them, a shard of fear so real it made the air feel colder. Memory, she whispered. Leaking. Then the lights cut out completely. Total darkness swallowed the room. Rowan's heart pounded. His breath echoed too loudly in the silence. Vaela, stay close. I am here. Her voice was beside him now. Close. He reached out blindly and felt her hand in his, cool, smooth, pulsing faintly with inner light. Then something growled. Not in the room. In the walls. A low, wet, animal sound. Like something ancient and wrong clearing its throat after centuries of stillness. Rowan raised his sidearm instinctively, his training overriding his panic. Don't, Vaela whispered, tugging gently on his arm. Guns won't help. This is not flesh. Then what the hell is it? She was silent for a long moment. Then. A reminder. Of what we buried. Of who we used to be. The lights blinked back on harsh, too bright, and the sound vanished instantly. The room was unchanged, but the air felt scorched by something invisible. Rowan looked at her. Really looked. Her light was dimmed. Her pupils too wide. You knew this would happen, he said quietly. Vaela didn't deny it. She stepped away from him, wrapping her arms around herself. This place was chosen for a reason, she murmured. Not because it was forgotten. But because it remembers. What are you carrying, Vaela? She looked up, her eyes suddenly shimmering. That is a question for another night. Rowan didn't sleep again. Not because of the hum. Or the shadows. Or the memory-laced whispers in the walls. But because of the hand that had gripped his so tightly in the dark. Not royal. Not alien. Just human enough to break him. The Brin Station's hallways were quiet the next morning, but it was not the peace of rest, it was the breath before rupture. Dr. Rowan Lorne moved through the dim corridors, his boots silent on the aging floor panels. Vaela was still in their shared quarters, silent and wrapped in her light-hued robes. She hadn't spoken a word since the lights had cut out hours earlier. Rowan needed answers. He needed clarity. What he got instead was a pattern. The hum was stronger here, in the administrative wing. The resonance grew louder as he approached the sealed archive chamber labeled Echo 9. A rusted plaque beneath the nameplate bore a scratched-out slogan in 2 languages. Memory is survival. Geller etista. Muri script. Rowan hesitated. His hand hovered over the manual access panel. Then, against every instinct, he opened it. The door creaked open. The room was dark. Dead consoles lined the walls, and the center of the space was dominated by a table stone-like, circular, etched with filaments of copper wire and bioluminescent crystal veins. But what made his breath hitch wasn't the tech. It was the echo. Projected above the table was a frozen hologram, grainy but intact. A woman, human, dressed in early diplomatic robes, speaking in a hushed tone. The Muri archives are not data. They are living memory. Neural. Emotional. Intertwined. We were never meant to interface with it. Not directly. Rowan stepped closer. Another figure appeared beside her, a Muri, much taller than Vaela, but with the same flowing shimmer beneath her skin. If you rip our dead from the light, the alien said solemnly, they will scream until the stars drown. The projection cut off. The hum in the room throbbed. Rowan turned and left. Fast. When he returned, Vaela was still seated in silence, her palms resting on her knees, eyes closed. Her skin glowed with restless, shifting patterns. Not soothing. Not elegant. Chaotic. Like storm clouds trying to remember how to rain. You went to the archives, she said without opening her eyes. Rowan froze. You knew what this station was built on, he said, voice low. You knew it held your people's dead. Now she looked at him. Her expression was unreadable. But her eyes, glass-like, faceted, held something sharp beneath her beauty. It wasn't supposed to wake. Then why bring it here? Rowan's voice cracked under pressure. What are you really doing, Vaela? She stood slowly, as if her body carried weight that wasn't physical. Her voice dropped, intimate and terrible. Because my people have forgotten what we sacrificed. What we entombed. They believe peace is possible without reckoning. I came to prove them wrong or right. I'm not sure which anymore. Rowan shook his head, stepping back. You're carrying it in you, aren't you? Silence. The memory. The dead. All of them. That's what the resonance is. It's leaking from you. She didn't answer. But her skin went utterly still. Not a flicker. Not a shimmer. Rowan had seen her emotional light enough to know what no color meant. Grief. The station groaned overhead, an old metal wail that mimicked something alive in pain. Vaela finally moved, walking to the small viewport at the far end of the room. Outside, the red giant Mirax loomed like a watching eye, its light bleeding through the dust of 1,000 forgotten transmissions. I didn't want you involved, she said quietly. You were supposed to be just a formality. A human name on a document. A pair of eyes trained to look away. Rowan crossed his arms. But I didn't. No, she admitted. You didn't. Why me? She turned to him, her voice suddenly fragile. Because your file said you lost someone in a first contact incident. Because you knew grief. And I thought, maybe that would keep you quiet. Her honesty hit him like a sudden decompression. He blinked slowly, the sting behind his eyes rising too fast. My brother, he said. He trusted too easily. The first diplomat to greet the Solari. They shot him before he could even speak. Vaela stepped closer. So now you never speak first. Rowan swallowed hard. The hum was louder again, pulsing like a third heartbeat between them. "This mission isn't diplomatic, is it?" he asked. "No." "Then what is it?" She touched her chest lightly. "I'm carrying something that could break the treaty between our species. Or rebuild it. Depends on how loud the dead want to speak." Rowan stared at her, feeling the tectonic shift in the air between them. "You should have told me. And you would have reported it." "Maybe." "Exactly." The silence stretched. Rowan looked at her, really looked. Not as a guard. Not as an alien. Just as a person trying to survive the weight of memory. And against every regulation, every rule, every defense he'd spent years building. He said, "You're not alone in this anymore?" Vaela's breath caught. Her light dimmed, then flared. And in the middle of a forgotten station orbiting a dying star, surrounded by memories no one dared unearth, a human and an alien stood facing the fractures between them. Not to seal them, but to see what might grow through the cracks. The storm came in silence. Not wind or flame but data. Light. Heat. Pressure. At precisely 3:17 station time, the resonance breached containment. It began as a pulse barely measurable. A flicker in the environmental systems. A stagger in the station's decaying rhythm. Then it spread. The walls of Brin Station began to remember. Rowan's eyes snapped open the moment the lights dimmed. Not flicker dimmed, as if the very idea of illumination had become reluctant. Across the room, Vaela stood at the viewport, still as sculpture, her skin casting off waves of amber and violet alarm colors. He was already reaching for his weapon when the floor vibrated beneath him. "What is it now?" he asked, voice hoarse from too little sleep and too much tension. Vaela didn't turn. "The archive is waking. The seals are failing. You said it wasn't supposed to wake." "It wasn't." She faced him then, and the look in her eyes terrified him more than the station's groans. "Regret. Not fear. Not panic. But the quiet kind of regret you feel when a plan becomes a confession." An alarm screamed through the corridor outside, the first real scream they'd heard since arriving. A voice, artificial and worn by time, filtered in from the comms. "Warning. Core memory drift detected. External containment at 24%. Manual override required." Rowan didn't wait. He grabbed his jacket and rifle, tossed a communicator to Vaela, and started for the door. "We need to get to the archive core, shut it down or stabilize it." "You don't understand," she said behind him, unmoving. "Make me." She followed now, her voice low. "If we interfere too late, we're not just risking collapse. The memory, the presence inside it might link to us. Permanently." "Define permanently?" She didn't answer. The corridor had become a shifting nightmare. Lights strobed erratically, flickering across walls that no longer held still. Colors bled through seams, pale blues, radiant gold, deep bruised violets, mirroring memory colors, but detached from any body. They reached the archive junction just as a panel burst open, steam and light pouring into the hall like breath from a wounded god. Rowan pressed his hand to the console, overriding locks, fingers flying through sequences he hadn't used in years. "This place is breaking apart, Vaela." "No," she said, eyes glowing. "It's breaking open." The door slid open, revealing the core chamber. It was no longer the dusty, dormant space he had found earlier. Now it was alive. The stone table in the center pulsed with radiant energy, veins of light spiraling upward like ghostly tendrils. Dozens of small crystalline nodes hovered mid-air, each projecting fragments of Muri memories. A battlefield. A child's birth. A burning temple. A lover's betrayal. Moments from lives no longer lived, playing over and over in frozen, fractured loops. And at the heart of it all, a seed of light. Floating. Cracked. Leaking a pale, shimmering mist that crawled toward them like a tide. Rowan stepped back. What is that? Vaela's voice broke. It's them. The voices. The consciousness of every Muri lost to war, silenced in transition, or denied resonance. I was meant to carry it safely, but the station has amplified it. You're the container? She nodded. I thought I could keep them quiet. But the Brin system was once used for resonant translation. It's turning their silence into screams. One of the memory strands drifted too close to Rowan. He gasped. Suddenly he was elsewhere, standing on a Muri balcony beneath twin moons, listening to a lullaby in a language he had never learned but somehow knew. He staggered back, gasping. They touched me. They read you, Vaela said. And they remember. They are searching for somewhere to belong. Someone. No, Rowan said, backing away. We have to shut it down. Now. But Vaela was already moving forward. She stepped into the core. The light wrapped around her, not as a threat, but as a greeting. Her skin shimmered with a dozen colors, now no longer rhythmic, but chaotic, like her body couldn't contain the storm inside. They are lost, she whispered. And they are looking for me? Rowan watched in frozen horror as Vaela's body lifted slightly from the ground, her fingers outstretched toward the crystal heart. Vaela. I can guide them. I can bring them back into sleep. That's not guiding, that's sacrifice. She turned, light blazing from her eyes. For a moment, she looked almost divine. If I fail, they'll consume everything. Memory is hunger when it has no story. Rowan stepped into the light. It wrapped around him, cool and sharp, sliding beneath his skin like ice water. Memories surged into him, not his. Theirs. He saw Vaela as a child, floating above a lake of stars. He felt the terror of battle. The isolation of royal life. The ache of carrying too much for too long. He saw himself, through her eyes, distant, sharp-edged, beautiful in his grief. The light responded. The resonance calmed. Vaela reached for him. You're anchoring me, she said, voice trembling. Don't let go. He took her hand. Never. Together, they channeled the resonance back into the seed, whispers fading into stillness, light coalescing into silence. One by one, the memories slowed, softened, dimmed. And then... silence. Real silence. Not the quiet of avoidance. The quiet of peace. They collapsed to the floor together, breathing hard, hands still clasped. Vaela's skin glowed with a soft, steady warmth. Gold and silver. Calm. Rowan touched her cheek without thinking. You're okay. She nodded weakly. We both are. And in that moment, the station stopped humming. Because for the first time, it was heard. They didn't speak for a long time. Rowan sat beside Vaela on the cold floor of the archive core, backs resting against the flickering console. Their shoulders brushed. Neither moved away. Above them, the once chaotic lights now shimmered faintly, calm and slow, like the embers of a fire that had finally stopped fighting the wind. The hum was gone. But something else remained in its place. Not a presence. Not a threat. An awareness. Rowan could still feel it in the air, like the way the world feels after lightning. Charged. Listening. Vaela's voice broke the silence at last, low and raw. They're quiet now. Not gone. Just resting. Rowan turned to her. Because of you? She shook her head. Because of us. They returned to their quarters in silence, bodies heavy with exhaustion, minds overloaded from memory they didn't own. Rowan moved stiffly. Mechanically he could still feel the echoes of that Mirax child's fear in his bones. Vaela entered first, casting a glance toward the single bed. She sat slowly, and this time, she didn't pretend to be composed. Her robe hung open at the collar, her light dimmed to a soft periwinkle. Not sadness. Vulnerability. Rowan crossed the room, half expecting her to close off again. But she didn't. She simply looked at him and asked, "Do you ever miss your home?" The question hit harder than it should have. Rowan leaned against the console, arms crossed. "I'm not sure I had one." Vaela tilted her head. "Everyone has a place they left behind." He thought about it. The city. The cold apartment. The photos he never unpacked. "I suppose I left Earth to get away from things I couldn't fix. And found things even more broken," she said softly. He smiled grimly. "Yeah. The galaxy's full of those." Vaela stood then, slowly walking toward the viewport. Mirax's dying light cast soft shadows along her face. Her voice was quieter now. "My home was made of glass trees and silent skies. Everything reflected light differently. You could walk in circles for hours and never be sure what was real." Sounds beautiful. It was. And lonely. Especially at the top. She turned to him. "I didn't leave because of duty. I left because I was afraid that if I stayed, I'd forget who I was underneath the titles." Did it work? A pause. Then. "No. But I'm starting to remember now." They shared rations by the dull kitchenette light. Rowan noticed she no longer complained about the taste. Vaela noticed he no longer avoided eye contact. Afterward, she returned to the bed without formality, and this time, Rowan didn't take the floor. He sat on the edge, rifle propped nearby, boots off. They faced opposite directions, but their words lingered in the space between them like heat after a storm. "What happens when we leave?" he asked. "We'll be hunted," she said simply. "There are those who want the truth buried. And us with it." "Yes." Rowan exhaled. "At least it's simple now." Vaela smiled faintly. "Is it? I mean, survival. That's pretty straightforward." She shifted, her shoulder brushing his. "And what about trust?" He was quiet for a long time. "That's less straightforward." She turned to face him. "Then let's make it simpler." Rowan's breath caught. Vaela reached out, not as royalty, not as a diplomat, not as the vessel of 1,000 voices. Just as herself. Her fingers touched his. And instead of flinching, he held on. Later that night, neither of them could sleep. They lay side by side, not touching, but close enough to feel each other's breath. In the darkness, Rowan whispered, "You still shimmer in your sleep." "I do." "Yeah. Like moonlight on water." A soft laugh. "That's a compliment, right?" He turned toward her, their faces inches apart. "It's everything." Vaela reached up, gently brushing a lock of hair from his brow. "You don't have to protect me anymore." "I want to." "Then don't guard me." Walk with me. Wherever this goes. Rowan didn't answer right away. He didn't have to. He kissed her not as a soldier, or a savior but as a man who finally let himself feel. Her light flared softly against his skin. And for the first time since leaving Earth, Rowan Lorne felt whole. The storm had passed. Not the resonance, not the metaphysical weight of memory but the storm within Brin Station. The whispers were quiet now. The dead, at peace. But the living had choices to make. And time was no longer an ally. Rowan watched Vaela from the corridor as she reattached the outer seals to the archive vault. Her movements were fluid, deliberate, regal even now, though her robe had been torn, though her hair was damp with sweat, though her glow was dimmer than he'd ever seen it. She was drained. But still standing. He didn't speak. Just watched her breathe in that strange half-light Brin Station always carried. Dust shimmered in the beams, like the remnants of something cosmic and unresolved. She turned, as if sensing him. We have to go soon. He nodded. I know. They'll know I failed to bury it. The message will spread through the lattice. And they'll come. Yes. For both of us. The airlock was stiff with age, its mechanical teeth grinding in protest. Rowan cycled through the launch sequence with fingers worn from sleeplessness. The emergency shuttle, their only route off station, shuddered awake, ancient systems humming with disuse. It's not built for long distance, he muttered. Neither are we, Vaela said beside him, strapping herself in. But sometimes the fragile things travel farthest. He looked at her, brow furrowed. Is that a Mirax saying? She shook her head. No. Just something I started believing after I met you. He blinked. Then smiled. The shuttle disengaged from Brin's spine like a breath released, coasting silently into the gravity-sparse zone beyond Mirax's dying light. Behind them, the station faded into shadow, one more relic, one more wound hidden in a galaxy's skin. But neither looked back. Ahead was a coded signal, a ping from Vaela's former allies. A rebel Mirax cell hidden in a crystalline forest world deep in unaligned territory. They'd been waiting for word. Proof. A spark to ignite what had long been buried under fear. How much do they know? Rowan asked. Very little, she replied. They know I carry something dangerous. That I disappeared. That I wasn't supposed to return. But they'll help us. Vaela's antennae twitched faintly, uncertainty. They might. The shuttle shook violently mid-transit, flung slightly off course by a magnetic wave from the solar storm still lingering around Mirax. Rowan gripped the stabilizers, eyes scanning for threats. We're not alone, he said. No, Vaela replied calmly. They've found us. A ping echoed through the console. Another vessel had entered the proximity band. No ID tag. No comms. Just presence. Predatory. Cold. They're not here to negotiate, Rowan said. Vaela closed her eyes, breathing in. No. They're here to erase what we carry. They move fast, too fast. A sleek obsidian ship broke into view, black as void, its weapons already charging. Rowan swerved, the shuttle groaning in protest. Evasive protocols offline, he growled. We're flying blind. Then let me see, Vaela said softly. He turned to her. She reached across the console, palms glowing. Thin veins of energy extended from her fingers, interfacing directly with the ship's navigation system. The console lit up with strange patterns, Mirax photonic code, elegant and alive. The shuttle responded like a living thing, ducking, diving, shifting between beams of light as enemy fire seared past them. "How are you doing that?" Rowan gasped. "My people forgot," she said, voice calm, eyes glowing white. "But I didn't." They dove toward the forest world's atmosphere, an endless canopy of bioluminescent trees waiting below. The enemy ship hesitated, then peeled away. "They won't follow us planet-side," Vaela said, slumping back. "Not without risking exposure." "You okay?" She nodded. "Just, light drained." Rowan took her hand as the shuttle descended through clouds that shimmered like glass. The rebel base was hidden beneath the roots of a massive, glowing tree, its trunk white as a fortress. As they approached, small figures in patched armor emerged from camouflaged entry points, mostly, and a few humans. They were met with weapons raised. "Identify yourselves," came the call. Vaela stepped forward, unsteady but proud. "I am Vaela of the Fifth Light. Emissary in exile. I carry what the Council would rather forget." The figures paused. Then one stepped forward, lowering their weapon. "Prove it." Vaela held up a small crystalline shard, warm with internal shimmer. "This is their voice. Yours too, if you listen." The soldier looked at Rowan. "And you?" He glanced at Vaela. "Human. Guard. Witness." A pause. Then the guard stepped aside. "Welcome to the last truth." That night, beneath a forest canopy that shimmered with 1,000 colors of memory, Rowan and Vaela sat beside one another, knees touching, minds heavy. "It doesn't end here," she whispered. "I know. You could walk away. No one would blame you." He looked at her, not the glowing alien, not the vessel of ancestral voices. Just her. And said, "I didn't fall for your light, Vaela. I fell for your silence. The kind that trusted me to stay." She leaned into him. "Then stay. Until the stars remember us." The rebel base thrummed with quiet urgency. Beneath the roots of the glowing forest, engineers whispered in fractured dialects. Weapons were checked. Data was transmitted through encrypted nodes. And in the heart of it all, Vaela stood, her palms resting lightly on a crystalline console pulsing with ancestral memory. Rowan watched her from across the chamber. The air was heavy with unspoken fears. He could see it in her posture, the way her light flared too brightly at the edges, struggling to contain what lived inside her. They had one chance. Expose the conspiracy hidden within the Muri High Council. Share the archive. Unite the fragments. Or lose everything. "We're ready," said Commander Irith, the rebel leader, a Muri elder whose skin flickered with scarlet conviction. "The network will go live the moment your shard touches the central node." "And what then?" Rowan asked, arms crossed. Irith gave him a look both grim and knowing. "Then the galaxy decides whether to listen, or burn." Vaela turned to him. "This will paint a target on every world I've ever called home." "Then we make new homes," Rowan said. "Ones where truth doesn't have to hide." Her smile was sad. "Brave. Tired. You always say the right thing." "No. Just the honest one." The transmission chamber was carved into a cavern of violet quartz, humming softly with dormant energy. Muri tech interfaced with ancient human hardware, bridging gaps born of war and fear. It wasn't elegant. But it was possible. Vaela stepped into the center, holding the shard still glowing with the lives of the dead, their voices quiet but ready. She looked once at Rowan. He nodded. And she placed the shard into the console. The moment the connection formed, the walls came alive. Holograms burst open, images, confessions, intercepted transmissions, surveillance from the High Council chambers. Names were named. Plots revealed. The truth, all of it, streamed like wildfire into the galactic relay. For a breathless moment, nothing happened. Then, transmission confirmed, a technician whispered. All sectors. All species. Open access. The room fell silent. Across the galaxy, screens flickered. From the slums of Earth's orbitals to the crystal courts of the Muri core worlds, people stopped. Watched. Listened. They saw war crimes. Betrayals. Lies dressed as peace. But they also saw her. Vaela standing at the center of it all, voice steady, light shimmering like a sunrise through glass. We do not remember to shame the past. We remember to choose a future different from it. Hours passed. Days, even. Some responded with riots. Some with hope. Some with silence. But something had changed. The silence that had haunted the galaxy, the one born of fear, denial, and buried grief, was broken. And in its place, a fragile music began. Rowan found her alone on a cliff above the rebel camp, overlooking the glowing forest. She sat cross-legged, robe trailing behind her like starlight caught in wind. You should be resting, he said gently. I am, she replied. Just, with my eyes open. He sat beside her. You think they'll forgive us? Either side. She considered. Forgiveness is slower than truth. But I think they'll understand. Eventually. And us. She looked at him, eyes soft. We don't need forgiveness, Rowan. We chose each other when we had every reason not to. And now, we keep choosing. He kissed her then. Not out of triumph. Or relief. But something deeper. Faith. That in a galaxy of shifting loyalties and broken treaties, they were real. Months later, the galaxy was changed. Small ways, at first. Peace summits reconvened. New protocols were drafted. Names of the dead were etched into memorials in both Muri and human script. The archive remained sealed but not silent. It now pulsed with light freely shared. A joint project. A joint memory. And on a quiet ship drifting through neutral space, a former guard and a once exiled empress traveled together. Not fugitives. Not warriors. Just two voices. Sharing silence. And everything it meant. Some stories begin in battle. Others in fire. But this one began in silence. In walls that hummed with memory, in eyes that didn't dare trust, in hands that almost didn't touch. Vaela and Rowan were not fated. They were not destined. They were chosen by one another. Their love was not easy. But it was honest. And in a galaxy that had long forgotten how to listen, they reminded us that the quiet between hearts is where the future begins. The silence has passed. But the echoes remain. If this story stirred something in you, left you breathless, wondering, or simply warmed on tea, let it vanish into the void. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us what stayed with you. What made you feel? Or what you'd choose, if it were you in the dark with someone glowing beside you. And if you'd like more journeys like this, tales of love forged in starlight and danger, subscribe to the channel. The next story is already whispering.